Does life require a purpose and a goal? This question was posed by Uchiha in a partner series between him, me, and Awarbore. Every 2 weeks, one of us is going to ask a question, and then answer said question. The other two will be answering the question during the interim before the next question is asked. I'm going to be presenting my answer over some Code Veronica gameplay, so you can watch me all suck at it. Links to Awarbore and Uchiha's videos will be posted in the description, as well as the, base transcript for this video, as I do have a lot to say about this particular topic. So without further ado, let me delve into my answer. To begin, I would like to look into the nature of life. Life is existence. A human existence, a human being's existence, really. So, since Uchiha exists, Uchiha has life, likewise for Awarbore. Now, when I talk about life, I am referring to not a particular life, such as my own or Awarbore's, but I'm speaking about the universal, which all lives share in common. And this brings me to my next point here. When I say that the universal there, I'm speaking of the being of life. This means the complete totality of life and all of its properties. For instance, squares. When I speak of squares, I'm not speaking about the square that I've drawn, or the word square, or the square that may be appearing on the screen right now, but rather the being of square, its square-ness, so to speak. Next, I'd like to define purpose and goal. I do find the use of both in the question a bit redundant, because the meaning of both words is essentially the same thing, but goal does have a weaker connotation than purpose. We can set goals and achieve those, that's something that we can do, but purpose is more of a higher idea, like fate. When we speak of purpose, we're referring to the end for which something exists. That's kind of like its reason for being. For instance, hammers exist to hammer nails, orange seeds exist so that they can grow into orange trees. Clearly, we can use these things for other purposes. Hammers can be used to, say, screw in screws, or orange seeds can be eaten by rodents or squirrels, but those would not be obtaining their intended purpose. The question that Uchiha poses, I interpret as, does life require purpose in order to be called life? And I think that's a bit tricky to answer. This is a question on the being of life. Can life exist without purpose? And an idea that came to me during my investigation of the question was, what if purpose doesn't exist? We use the word purpose to designate the cause and effect of actions. Those actions exist, but perhaps purpose does not. To elaborate, we say something has purpose because it seems that hammers hammer nails and orange seeds grow into orange trees, but these causal chains are called purpose, or the end of which we call purpose because we think these things necessarily have an end. Otherwise, what reason would there be for these things to exist? And that's really at the heart here. If we assume that these things have a reason to exist, then we can come up with the conclusion that life must necessarily have purpose, because purpose exists. It's part of being, so life then participating in being must also participate in purpose. However, the other implication, that purpose does not exist, may seem like a dreadful one. The question, why am I here, is then met with silence, as being has no account for the purpose of you or anything else in its purview, and that can be a terrifying idea. Now, what really drove this home for me was thinking about mathematics. The wondrous thing about math is it doesn't require us to be mathematics. The being of a square is no more or no less being by virtue of our existence. We're simply discovering the properties of a square rather than making up new properties of it. So what reason does math exist then? Divorced from physics and humanity, I couldn't find an answer as to why it exists. There really seems no purpose for the being of these abstractions. If purpose has being and all things that exist participate in being, then mathematical objects must exist for some reason. They must have a purpose, but there is no end of mathematical objects. The square does not become something else. Through the nature of its squareness, it remains a square. One could argue that because being is complete and the being of a square is complete, then it always achieves its end, so its purpose is always being fulfilled. And if we look at the reason to be perspective, then we just simply say that a square's reason to be is to just exist. That seems a bit tautological. It doesn't really add anything to our investigation here, so I kind of just want to wave my hand and sweep that under the rug and say, forget about it. That's not really an objection that I'm going to consider, because it doesn't really seem to be saying much. Thus, I can say with a little bit of force that life has no purpose. It does not require it, because it just simply doesn't have it. The purpose that we think of is just a meaning that we attach to the causal chain of events. Life has no purpose can seem like a statement that is daunting, but is actually quite liberating. It allows us to ascribe a purpose to our own lives and set out to achieve those. Though, this would also open the doors for anyone to say that their purpose is to kill all humans, or even worse, to become a furry. We would just have to accept this without any objection, because, heck, these purposes don't really exist. Your purpose could be anything. You could decide to change it one day, and who's to say that that's wrong, because there is no universal purpose to which all purposes need to ascribe. Thanks for watching until the end. I encourage you all to tear this to shreds. I just ask that you bring some reason to the table when you critique this, because I would rather see some reasoning and some things that I might need to elaborate on than just like, haha, you suck. So, until next time, guys, sayonara.